today we are going to see this architecture cruise in Chicago. Chicago has got some very good architecture. It has got some bold and innovative designs, which keeps it in the front line of the American design. So we have seen some beautiful skyscrapers, and that is the reason I thought of having this cruise, which is the architecture cruise in Chicago. And you can take this cruise from the Navy Pier. You come here and you can get the tickets for the cruise here. So, and on the way
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome aboard the Evening Star for the Chicago River. I will be your tour guide, and we are getting underway. To the east, where the moving water is as far as the eye could follow. To the west, a sea of grass as far as wind might reach. Now, this is how the greatest Chicago writer, and I don't use the word greatest lightly, Mr. Nelson Algren, in a little book called Chicago City on the Make, described. Today we're going to see the legacy of some of the giants of Chicago's architecture, from people like Daniel Burnham, who once said, "Make no small plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood. Aim high in your hopes," and Burnham aimed high. In 1893, Chicago would host the World's Fair, the Columbian Exposition. And for that fair, the architect Daniel Burnham was in charge of creating entirely from scratch an entire working city for all the events of the fair. Called the White City, it was inspired by Greek and Roman architecture in a style out of Paris called the Beaux-Arts, or City Beautiful movement. So though those World's Fair buildings were made out of wood, they were whitewashed with alabaster and hem so they would shine and look like classical Greek and Roman marble. They had 100,000 incandescent arc lamps to illuminate the fair, showing off the wonders of electricity. You could dine on those wonderful new foods we gave to the world. Well, truth be told, Lake Michigan wasn't filtered well in its old days. In the early days, when you turned on your faucet connected to the lake, you got a great glass of drinking water. It just happened to still have fish and other mysterious things floating around in it still. So you see, everything about that World's Fair city was a glimpse into what the city of the future would be for 27.4 million people in attendance from around the globe. And it was so successful. On July 4th, 1909, Daniel Burnham, to make what he had done for the World's Fair a reality downtown, Daniel Burnham unveiled the plan of Chicago, the beginning of urban planning here. Looking at Lake Michigan, the Chicago River, and the surrounding prairie, Burnham mapped out what a great city could be. Inspired by the architecture of Paris, the Palace de Concorde, Burnham envisioned civic piers reaching into the lake. The result on your left, 3,000-foot Navy Pier. An arcade and freight pier in 1916. World War II, a naval training base. Today, after extensive structural renovation, it is a recreational destination for Chicagoans and visitors alike, of shops, restaurants, boat rides, and even a Ferris wheel. It is very appropriate they put a Ferris wheel at Navy Pier. The inventor, George Washington Gale Ferris, was from Bushnell, Illinois, and he put up the very first Ferris wheel at our 1893 fair. And that Ferris wheel was kind of an answer to the Eiffel Tower, which had premiered at the last big cultural event, the Paris Exhibition of 1889. So when we had a fair a few years later, we had to have something as grand as the Eiffel Tower. We gave the world a bit of fun. The first Ferris wheel, 264 feet high, cars fashioned out of railroad boxcars. 60 people could fit in every car, and on the very first Ferris wheel, each car had its own bar. The Chicago River, which we're now entering, is the focal point of the city. And that day of fire supposedly started, me boyos, by Daisy the cow, Mrs. O'Leary's cow over there on the west side at the O'Leary farm. Daisy kicking over a kerosene lantern and starting a fire that took out 17,450 buildings were gone in about a day and a half. But it was because of that fire, architects and engineers would flock here to rebuild. They suddenly had a blank slate upon which to try new building styles. And you needed something new. After the fire, you could not rebuild with wood anywhere in downtown Chicago. That left you with brick. But there's a problem with masonry if you go very high. When you depend on the load-bearing exterior brick wall to support a building, every time you add another floor, the base wall must increase 6 inches. You go very high, and the base wall takes up all your floor space simply for support. So looking for more efficient building materials, the evolution of architectural framing occurred in 1885 when Civil War bridge builder engineer William LeBaronjini introduced for the first time here the iron and steel grid frame. In other words, hanging the weight of a building on an internal skeleton. And he went up to 10 stories, paved the way for the modern skyscraper. Father of Chicago School, Louis Sullivan, described it thusly: your building should really be like a Greek column, a tripartite division of base, shaft, and capital, every inch a proud and soaring thing. Now the Chicago School would influence long before it became a 1980s post-punk industrial band of the same name. Second director of the real Bauhaus, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, father of modernism, came to Chicago in 1938, and from his position at the Illinois Institute of Technology, Mies would spread the modern or minimal style around the globe. We'll see Mies carry your canoe and reach the southern flowing Des Plaines River, which flows into the Illinois River and thus the Mississippi, meaning Chicago would become the critical link in an inland waterway system that could connect the entire continental United States. The 1848 Illinois-Michigan Canal would make Chicago a boom town. By 1890, 1 million people here. But a million people, and at that time being hog butchered to the world with the Chicago Union stockyards, everybody used this river as a sewer. And all of the pollution flowed right back into the lake, our drinking source. The polluted water caused 12% of the population to die from typhoid and cholera epidemics. So to stop the river from polluting the lake, in 1900 they dug a new canal. Passing under a number of Chicago's trunnion bascule bridges. Inspired by the bridges of Paris, bascule derives from the French for seesaw. Each leaf turns on the trunnion thing with a counterweight. You move that counterweight and raise a bridge like this in 2 minutes time. Now, if you are downtown tomorrow morning, around 8 to about 10 a.m., you should see these operating, because they open on Saturdays all the way through the end of June for the sailboat season. In the distance on the right, see the building with the antenna. That is Big John, the John Hancock Center, the 4th tallest building in Chicago, a modernist work of art. 46,000 tons of steel, 1,127 feet, not 1 ounce of decoration, for that is modernism. Now London has its Big Ben, Paris its Eiffel Tower, Chicago's answer, the clock tower on our right. It is of course the one and only Wrigley Building, commissioned by the chewing gum king, William Wrigley Jr., who as a young man had traveled to Daniel Burnham's wonderful fair. He brought that Beaux-Arts style downtown. That clock tower is modeled after the Spanish Renaissance, the 11th century Giralda Tower in Seville in Spain. Also on our right, it looks like a Gothic cathedral, Tribune Tower, home to the Chicago Tribune newspaper. 1922, Colonel McCormick of the Trib offered $100,000 in a worldwide design contest for the most beautiful office building in the world. Hausenhof of New York win, inspired by the Gothic cathedrals of France and Belgium in that design. There is actually a connection. The White Castle restaurant and 311 South Wacker were both modeled after your visitor center, the Water Tower downtown. Anyone found the Water Tower yet? Little Yellow Castle. It was built in 1869 as a standpipe for the water pumping station. The only building on that side of town. There were about 14 throughout the whole city, but it escaped the Great Fire. It's a symbol of Chicago's spirit today. You all have to go to the Water Tower sometime during your trip. Oh, gaze at the Sears Tower one more time and imagine you are French. Your name is Alain Robert, but the world calls you Spider-Man. Alain Robert is the French daredevil who in August 1999, like a little monkey, climbed to the top of our Sears Tower to be arrested for criminal trespass and performing an aerial show without using a net. He couldn't stop. He climbed the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, the Eiffel Tower at home in Paris, the Petronas Tower, the Taipei Building in Taiwan. 2 years ago, he was swinging off the spire above the Burj Khalifa of Dubai. Consider his mind, how he views the universe. What is architecture if it is not the way that we interact with the space that we inhabit? What I mean by this, you or I, we look at a building and we say, beauty. We say function. We think of the uses we put that building to. Alain Robert looks at that same building and says, aha, another obstacle to help me overcome my fear of heights. Mr. Robert suffers from vertigo. That's why he's climbing. He's still trying to get over that fear. Shall we all climb a building like Mr. Robert? No, of course not. I do, however, suggest it never hurts to try to see universe with new eyes. I learned to think this way from a man who always stressed universe when he was writing Spaceship Earth. He seemed to be a verb when he took a truncated icosahedron and gave us the geodesic dome, like the one you might have seen at Disney World. I was in Reno, Nevada 1 year ago looking at his Dymaxion automobile, which showed up at the 1933 Chicago World's Fair. I speak of the architect, the philosopher, the inventor, R. Buckminster Fuller. If you don't remember the work of Bucky Fuller, look him up tonight when you get home, and then turn in your papers to me tomorrow by 11 a.m. Hill, wrong direction. Well, let's go to the city where the motto is, I will, and I will. man with a fire, and the fire almost took the town. I said the Great Chicago Fire, but she all burned down. Well, but the people of Chicago, well, you're never gonna keep us down. I said the Windy City, rusty-hearted people can't keep us. Not when we are living in the most architecturally significant city on the face of this entire planet Earth. With all apologies to Florence, Rome, Paris, Prague, Vienna, New Delhi, Helsinki, London, Dublin, Auckland, Sydney, Antwerp, Amsterdam, Seoul, Beijing, Shanghai, Taipei, Tokyo, Tegucigalpa, Mexico City, Moscow, Warsaw, Bucharest, and Budapest, Athens, Tel Aviv, Istanbul, Los Angeles, for one or two buildings, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Boston, and New York City, but you're never going to keep Chicagoans down. Folks, thanks for choosing Shoreline. I'll see you on the dock.
Thank you.
All right, folks, the ramp is secure. It's safe to disembark. Please watch your step as you're making your way off the boat, and also make sure